Okay. Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be going over an update for the spring semester and also an introduction to the competition and what you need to do for it, the important dates, and then we'll have a Q&A session and discuss anything and everything, including Kessler, development, the competition, etc. So I'm just going to hop right into it with some recent changes to Kessler itself. So there was a slight modification to the game state information. We refined this because it was a little bit unclear to people what each thing was, including things like time and the time step. So we renamed some of them to be more clear. So time is the elapsed simulation time. So this is the actual sim time that you're able to access. The example here is, 1.23, 1.24, et cetera, in seconds. Delta time is simply the time step size or the DT size. So in this example, 0.01 seconds. And that is calculated directly from the frequency, which you can set when you instantiate the game object. And then step is just the simulation step number or the frame number. It starts at 0 and then just increments 1, so it's an integer value. For mines, there was a divide by 0 bug that was found when it was coincident with asteroid locations and had 0 speed. This is an extremely rare case, but we wanted to take care of it anyway. So now what happens if it is coincident with an asteroid, because previously it just destroyed the asteroid and the children didn't have any momentum, so they just sat there. Now it imparts momentum to them and splits them evenly around 360 degrees instead of the normal plus minus 15 degrees offset. There's also been a number of improvements that have been identified for us to make for computational efficiency and some other things having to do with things like float operations. And so we'll be incorporating those. Those changes have not been incorporated yet, but we will be doing that soon and making a new release. When that happens, actually, it will put a notification in the Slack channel. So again, I'm going to plug the Slack. If you are not already in the channel, please join the Slack channel. It's one of the quickest ways to get a hold of us and have up-to-date information. And there's also discussion in there about things, especially like changes to Kessler. There have been a lot of discussion recently. Okay, so I'm going to move on and start talking about the competition. So some key information. We are going to be doing custom ship sprites again, and those will be due to us by March 22nd. You can literally just email the file. And we will host those on the GitHub website, not GitHut, whatever that is. And we will make a special page for that along with voting. And I'll mention what we're doing with voting in a minute. Qualifying, this will be by April 5th this year. So we will, essentially what's happening is we will evaluate each of your agents against a number of other agents and scenarios that are provided by us, and how your agent performs against those baseline agents will determine their seeding in the competition playoff bracket. Another reason we're doing this is to ensure both that teams are on track and that we can smooth out whatever integration issues we may have early on. And so it makes it a lot easier later on for the actual competition submissions. Peer reward voting. So this is for the custom ship sprites. We will be taking votes from you, and you'll be voting on the ship sprites that you like the most. So after you create and submit your custom ship sprites, you'll vote on all the other teams, and we'll do ranked choice voting. And you must submit your own both to vote, and you must vote to be eligible for the prizes for the peer rewards. And the voting will close also on April 5th. Some more important dates. Your final AI agents and code will be due on April 15th, 2024. By the way, these dates have changed a little bit. We did push the competition back a couple weeks because we've been a bit late with spring updates and a few other things. But the date that you must submit your final agent is April 15th. And so you will qualify with a version of your agent, and that determines the bracket seeding. You can then make changes afterwards. You can make changes, still make improvements, do additional training, etc. But this is when it gets frozen. So you'll have your final version. It can be in whatever branch, but you have to make sure that we have access to that branch in your repo and it's shared with us. You either add us as collaborators or you send us a link such that we're able to get it. The final competition date will be Friday, April 19th. This will be held virtually, and I will send out an invite and everything very soon so that everybody can get it on their calendars. The final competition day. So it is April 19th. The times are somewhat tentative right now. They will be refined after qualifying. The reason for that is, we have a rough idea of how many teams we'll have, but we never know the final number until qualification. But the current times that we have laid out are starting at noon Eastern. All times are Eastern here. At noon, we will start with an introduction presentation where we'll go through a recap of XFC and what has been done throughout the year, including the seminars and everything else. We'll also have student presentations. We will send slide requirements. It'll be very short, probably on the order of about 5 slides. I know not a whole lot, but we'll try to cram it in there. And the time requirements will be based on the number of teams. So that's to be determined, but last year we had, I believe, 10 minutes for each presentation, but we only had 3. So depending on the number of teams, we can adjust the timing a little bit, but I would say a minimum of 5 minutes. The competition live stream will start at 1 or right after we're done with the student presentations. I'll lock that in. I'll try to lock that in soon, actually, because we want people to be able to join for that, especially. But the live stream will be similar to an esports event. The organizers will host on a combination of Zoom, Twitch, YouTube. We're going to refine that because we've had some issues in the past with having streaming on multiple platforms at the same time with latency. And it makes it very difficult for people because there's a lag sometimes between what they're seeing on one stream versus the other. So we'll work on reducing that or just moving to one of the platforms like Twitch. The students may be interviewed while their agent is playing the game. So we'll want you to identify a spokesperson that will speak during the stream. It's going to be, little things back and forth with the organizers, and then maybe also some comments on how the agent's performing in game, because that's always a lot of fun. And then after the competition playoff itself, we'll have closing statements and some preliminary results because we'll have the live results from the playoff right then. For awards, the full results and prizes will be resolved in the week after the competition. You'll be notified of final results and prizes and all of that stuff no later than May 6th. Not 2022, another typo, 2024. The format that it will take will be a playoff. The agents will be evaluated directly against the other team's agents in a single elimination playoff. The seeding, like I mentioned, will be determined by the qualification evaluation, and we'll have buys for top teams depending on the number of teams and how the structure is laid out of the bracket. The scenarios, in general, these are going to be chosen to elicit certain behaviors and performance from the agents. If you want to see some examples of what those scenarios have been in the past, the previous competition live streams are on the YouTube channel. They will not be exactly the same. We like to mix it up a little bit. But feel free to train over any of the ones that you've seen and make your own to try to, get the best coverage in your train set as possible. The initial conditions will be chosen such that each agent either doesn't have an advantage, or we will use symmetry where it'll be evaluated twice to guarantee that there is no advantage initial condition. This is just an example of a single elimination bracket for 19 teams. We don't expect to have this many, but if we do have, say, an odd number of teams, what we will do is we will essentially have play-in games where the higher seeded teams get buys and don't play in the earlier rounds. And so in this case, the lowest seeded teams, 14 through 19, play against each other to play into the next round, and then we'll proceed from there with normal single elimination bracket rules. And then for prizes, real quick, this is an example from last year. Last year, we only had 3 teams submit their final agents for the playoff. The scoring for each round will be based on the number of asteroids hit during all the scenarios evaluated. If there are ties in the number of asteroids hit, we will have tiebreakers, including accuracy and then total deaths. And again, that seeding is determined by your qualification evaluation against these baseline agents that we provide. So last year, because there were 3 teams, we determined seeding, and then round 1 was seed 2 versus seed 3, and then the winner of that played the first seed. So that's what you can expect as far as the layout and format of the playoff itself. Your agent will need to output its explanations for its behavior in text form and strings. Last year, we attempted to do what's called shoutcasting, or something similar to broadcasting in audio form, what the agent was doing. And we found that it didn't work too well because, simply the time it took to get the explanation out in audio form, the agent, because this is running in real time, had already performed, 100 more actions, essentially. And so that was a bit of the downside for that format. So we're going to be changing things up and going back to string form, and then we will use those strings for analysis for auditing the behavior after the fact. So we're not going to evaluate them live this year. We will record the evaluations, and so it'll be transparent. Everybody will get to see what we did, but we're not going to do that live during the competition format. And so the agents will be run through dedicated scenarios to elicit whatever explainable behaviors we care about. In the past, it has been certain things like you have a large asteroid coming towards you and a small asteroid coming towards you, and we want to know which one you're going to prioritize and why. And your solutions in general will be judged based on a number of criteria. These are coming from an explainable AI rubric, partially created by Scott Dick from the University of Alberta, and others. And they'll be scored based on a number of criteria, including things like ease of understanding, the quality of the explanations, like how good the explanations are in relating the behavior of the agent to the human observer, the sensibility of actions, and innovation. So this is just an example of a scenario that we might have. Suppose you have your chip and you have a number of asteroids on screen, and they're all stationary except for one, which is coming directly at you. We may be interested in hearing an explanation from your agent about why it prioritized which targets, or if it, let's say, avoids a particular asteroid instead of targeting it, or something else. We are going to put it in situations to see what it does and why. And so you'll need to output your explanation strings to a file. We're going to provide some functionality for you to do that. You won't need to do much on your end, except for being able to create those explanations from your controller class and then send them off to some function. So on your side, it should be relatively straightforward. You're just going to be creating those explanation strings, and then you'll pass them to some functionality that we give you. And we'll give you more details on that soon. The methods that we use to evaluate them, it will be going over that explanation rubric that I mentioned, along with things like word clouds. One reason why we want to use things like word clouds is we want to identify, things that matter the most to your agent throughout its each particular scenario. So that's one way to do that, is essentially looking at, say, the frequency of things that it was observing or acting on. And again, also those other situations where we want to see, like, did it avoid or not? Did it target an asteroid or not? Did it decide to shoot or not? All those things may be interesting to us. Getting into your ship sprites, this is one of the more fun things that we only had one team do last year, unfortunately, but we're hoping to see a lot of teams participate in this. So we want to see custom ship sprites you can take a look at the existing ship sprites in Kessler in that directory in the graphics and then images. And you can choose one of the existing ones and modify it, or you can make your own from scratch. It's up to you. You can do a completely custom one. You can change the colors, add text and logos. Whatever you do, though, make sure you have rights and permissions for any images, words, or phrases that you use. So don't use any trademarked things. Don't use any images that may have some license associated with them, such that we can't use or put them on a platform like YouTube. After you create them, you'll send them to us, and we will load them into the game when we run the competition, along with putting them up on the website so that people can vote for their favorites. We do have some requirements. This is somewhat of a loose requirement at the moment because we haven't tested it to a high degree, but we do say that it needs to be less than or equal to 20 kilobytes. There may be some wiggle room there, but as a rule of thumb, let's keep it to that for now. Again, no copyrighted or trademarked materials unless you get explicit permissions and rights, not just for you, but for us. And we also have to be able to have those rights to be able to put them on a platform like YouTube. It cannot contain anything offensive, profane, obscene, etc. We say that you don't or can't alter the dimensions or size of the ship sprite, but that's really hard coded into the game. But what we will say is be careful with your aspect ratio. Keep it as close to 1-to-1 as possible, because essentially in the game it is creating a circular bubble that is considered the hitbox. So it's much better if you keep it 1-to-1. In the past, we've had some long and skinny ones that are just very hard to see because it scales them dynamically based on that. Okay, now the important part that everybody wants to hear about, competition prizes. So Talos has generously agreed to donate a $2,000 prize pool. So the prizes, the prize pool for the playoff portion in particular will be $1,300. The prizes will be for first, second, and third. First place, which is the winner of the entire playoff, gets $700. Second place, the runner-up, gets $400. And third place gets $200. Third place will be determined by an additional playoff match between the teams that get knocked out in the Final Four round. And this will be, if needed, based on the number of entries. But that is the current structure that we have. We will also have prizes for explainability. The top 3 scoring teams, as scored by the judging panel with that explainability rubric, will receive prizes. So first will be $150, second will be $100, and third will be $50. We will also have prizes for the most innovative solutions. Again, this will be judged by the same judging panel as the explanations. And again, the top 3 scoring teams, and the distribution is for first, there will be 100, second, 65, and third, 35. And then we'll also have a prize pool for the custom ship peer awards. And these will be determined by you. It'll be determined by the votes from the teams. This won't be from the judging panel. It won't be from the organizers. This is for you guys. Again, first, second, and third, 100, 65, and 35. In order to be considered for a prize for the peer award, you have to submit your team vote and you have to submit your custom ship sprite. I do also want to plug NAFIPS 2024. This is the annual conference for the North American Fuzzy Information and Processing Society. This year it is being held Monday through Wednesday, May 27th through May 29th on South Padre Island, a nice beach location in Texas. The website is here at nafips2024.digipen. And we will be having a special session at NAFIPS on XAI. And specifically, time will be reserved for a discussion on XFC itself. We had a fantastic session last year where we presented not only the results and what we did throughout the year, we also had abbreviated student presentations where the top teams that competed got to show off their solutions and what they did. But then we also have a big open discussion on both improvements to XFC and what to do in the future as far as, changes to the game, changes to the format of the competition, how to increase outreach, things like that. So I encourage you, if you're already going to be at NAFIPS or you're considering going to NAFIPS, to join in on that discussion and session. And also after the XFC playoff, we will be talking with the top teams to see if they'd be willing to give us their presentations to show at NAFIPS. That was nice to highlight what they did, and a lot of people are very impressed. We had some really innovative solutions the past few years. The results for the explainability portion. So in the weeks after the competition, the judges will be evaluating your agents in those explainability scenarios that I mentioned, and they will be judging them based on those rubrics and then coming up with final scores for that and the innovation scores. And the teams will be notified by 5 p.m. Eastern on May 6th, 2020. Again, another typo, sorry. 2024, not 2023. And then the prizes will be dispersed by either Talis or NAFIPS. We will contact the teams with details for the prize disbursements. So that is the update on the current status of the competition and what you need to do, and some changes to Kessler. These are our contact info for the organizers, both myself and Sam King, who's also on the call. The website is located here on GitHub. We'll be adding some more features and pages and updating the timeline with the new competition dates. We'll also be adding the page for the custom ship sprites and voting polls. Also the YouTube channel. You can see the old competition live streams here, along with the recordings for all the seminars, including this talk today. And Slack, I'm going to plug it every single time because it's one of the best ways to communicate with everyone, especially the organizers. Even though we've had some notification issues, but I'm still going to say that's the best place to have discussions, especially for everyone else to see. And with that, I'll open it up to Q&A. We encourage any questions about the competition, what you need to do, and anything else related to XFC. Thanks.
Thanks for the presentation.
Absolutely.
So I prepared a list of questions if that is welcome. So first I was wondering, what Python version is this going to be run?
Due to some of the graphics things, we're still requiring Python 3.10.
Okay. And
that can potentially change, but I'll have to talk with the guys that developed the graphics interfaces. It could be that we can move to a later version, but currently we're stuck on 3.10.
Okay, yeah, I'll just make sure to test for that. And which packages can I use? So I'm assuming the requirements of Kessler, like NumPy, I'm able to use. Can I use skfuzzy for my fuzzy inference?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
We don't have any technological requirements as far as packages you're allowed to use for, fuzzy or the machine learning aspect. Obviously, anything is fair game.
Okay, and if it's something that's missing on the computer, you'll just install it?
Correct. Yeah, so that's a good point to bring up. We will require your either requirements.txt or other Python dependencies from your repo when we go to install it.
Okay. And let's see.
And by the way, as far as evaluation time is concerned with skfuzzy, it can be pretty fast. But one of the things that's built in is that if we do not receive a command from your controller class in time, the simulation will advance and you will not have control output. So there's sort of a, an implicit requirement for controller eval time.
Okay, is that controller timeout implemented within Kessler, like within the code that I'm able to test with?
Yes.
I don't believe that is a thing right now
Okay.
because
That could have changed during the conversion from the old fuzzy asteroids. I'll have to double check.
yeah, I know in the old version there was a controller timeout, but that's no longer a thing. So that was going to be my next question, which is like what sort of performance would be acceptable? Because the the biggest problem with my controller right now is just the evaluation times, and I've been working really hard to optimize that, and like that's mainly what I'm working on right now. So I just had a lot of questions regarding that.
Yeah, that is something that we've wanted to emphasize as well. So, we may actually add that back into Kessler. Um, that's it both incentivizes controller efficiency while also just making, an implicit punishment essentially for having an eval time that is too high.
Okay. And if that gets added in, could there be some functionality where the controller gets told when it's going to get cut off so that it knows how much time it has? Or does the controller itself, like, would I need to monitor how long I'm taking and then cut off the computation if it's taking too long to avoid getting the timeout?
We can see what the cost of implementing, something like a flag right before it moves on would be. One aspect is, simply we don't want to bog down the loop in Kessler any more than we have to. Um, so we'll see about implementing that. It could be done pretty effectively, I think, but I would say that's TBD depending on if and when we implement that again, which, that was a problem in the past was eval times. When we rewrote Kessler, I'd forgotten that we took it out. Um, having that aspect in there is probably going to be important for the real-time viewing of the competition. So I would say it's probably a strong chance it will get implemented, whether it needs to happen on the controller side or not, for, keeping track of how long you have left to make that eval is, that's an open question, but we'll discuss further.
Okay, yeah, I'd appreciate if we could talk about that more because yeah, like that's again just the biggest issue right now. And like I could there are some things I could do to cut down on that time or set some sort of limit, but I just the issue is that I think my controller would just completely break if it actually skips like if it just skips the actions from that time step without the controller knowing, then it could break things. So yeah, I'd appreciate if that could be done in like a transparent way. And I think that's something that we'll have to talk about a lot more because right now you could literally do time.sleep for as long as you want and it'll just freeze the whole game and then synchronously wait for the controller. So um
Yeah, we had previously
yeah.
done some async things, including with the shoutcast functionality that we added last year. And it was there were a number of benefits for being synced, but of course, the downside is in that case where things are taking too long and it really hampers the real-time viewing for the competition. So
Yeah, absolutely.
regardless of the changes, we'll be talking with the group about that. And we're open to suggestions, but we want to be fair also, in the sense of, if someone has a really efficient control system, we want to incentivize that. We want to we don't want to penalize them for making a quote unquote better solution. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Also with the oh yeah, this is a different question, but will the controller class be freshly initialized before each scenario evaluation? Or do you instantiate the class and then just run multiple scenarios on it where you're passing different game states from like two separate games?
I will double check the competition code, but if I remember correctly, it is instantiated at the beginning and run through each one. But let me double check
Okay,
and I'll get you an answer.
right. I think I tried that, but then I got an issue actually within Kessler where I was getting an error. So I didn't think it was possible, but then I was watching the previous competition and it seems like it was only instantiated once. So I'll need to have a way to test that it actually works so I can wipe the state and restart that.
Yeah, let me check the competition code and I'll get you a definitive answer along with putting it in the Slack for everyone to see.
Okay, sounds good. Also with the okay, back to the performance thing. Would it be allowed if I tried to make a compiled C module out of my controller that you could import instead of importing the .py file? Would that be fair game, or should I avoid trying to
That
do
is
that?
fair game, but it must have a Python interface. So you can use whatever method you want to wrap it, like Swig, or if it's Python, as long as it can be imported as a Python package,
Okay.
then yeah, then that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm currently looking into, but I just wanted to make sure that it was allowed. Hopefully that can
Yep.
solve some of the performance issues.
I mean,
Do
that's a
you
popular way, and we've done things like that in the past. We do things like that pretty often, where the heavy computation might get moved into C++ or some other compiled language, and then it all gets wrapped in Python.
Gotcha. And do we know which exact computer, like what are the specs of the computer that this is going to be run on? Because I could do all the testing on my computer, but that might not match the performance of the actual computer used.
In the past, it was being run on an HP workstation laptop. Um, if desired, we can move that to being a fairly beefy desktop, and I can send out specs on that one if necessary. That'll probably be about the limitation, though, is a single computer with a single GPU. Um, the and the yeah. Yeah, I can send out specs on that desktop, which we can use for the competition.
Okay, yeah, that would be appreciated. Off the top of your head, do you know approximately which year?
The computer, the desktop,
Yeah, the computers.
it is from, let's see, late 22, early 23, and has an RTX 4060, I think. I don't remember the processor, but it's Intel, I believe 8 core.
So fairly modern then.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a fairly beefy machine. Yeah.
Okay. And then aside from that, with the strategies that the controller uses, is there anything like aside from like the obvious stuff that would be prohibited, like trying to access the internet or the file system, right? Is there any is there anything that's prohibited, or is everything pretty much fair game as long as you're within the
As long
like
as as long as you're accessing the game state information, that's the information you're using.
yeah.
In the past, we've said that we don't mind if people want to try to do things like raw pixel, but we're not providing any of that as functionality. And so the only requirement is you're limited to, that Python interface and the controller eval time. But outside of that, we don't have requirements on that. So pretty much anything is allowed.
Okay, so pretty much just like an isolated black box where you put in the game state, get the actions out, and it has to be within the performance, like the time budget.
Correct.
Um, okay.
What you do on your computational side inside of that black box is up to you.
Okay. Is there a memory limit?
The memory limit, I can get you I don't have a requirement off the top of my head, but I can find that out.
Okay. So there's no explicit memory limit that we could do. Like I'm not planning on doing anything
Correct.
crazy like generating gigabytes of lookup tables, but just I can use a little bit within reason, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I can get you a more realistic limitation after doing some investigation.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and say it hasn't been an issue thus far in the competition, so that's one
Yeah.
reason why.
But like, yeah, I doubt I'd use any more than like megabytes, but like definitely not gigabytes. But I think it's still important to, if there is an explicit limit to actually make that explicit. Um, and yeah, I guess right now, just my biggest concern is still just that performance. So before the competition, can you guarantee that we'll have like a clear guidance on like the performance limits and like because I just want like something strict and well defined so I know exactly what the
Mhm.
limit is, and I don't want to like have like a fuzzy limit where I don't know if I'm crossing the boundary and then my controller just times out. um, I think we can, that could be an ongoing discussion, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, thus far, one reason we didn't have it was that it either hadn't come up or, in the past before we moved to the new version of Kessler, um, we had it asynced essentially such that it would,
Right.
if your controller didn't evaluate in time, that's it.
Right.
So I'll get some more clear-cut requirements and limitations on memory and eval time, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, like the way my controller works, like without giving away the whole strategy, the amount of processing really varies on the scenario. And like, okay, obviously, the more asteroids, it's gonna scale up at least linearly depending on the amount of asteroids, but also like depending on how my threat level, how safe I feel, I can also ramp up the amount of work I'm doing. And if there is a limit that I should hit, like it would be, I am able to kind of put a ceiling on that. So yeah, I just need to know where that ceiling is, and then maybe there could be like a generous, um, like a more, yeah, we could probably work something out to kind of put a limit on that. Um, or maybe you could also trust us to like self-regulate that and just have like maybe like during the qualifying, just have a situation where you say, okay, this has to evaluate under 1 minute or within like 1.5 times real-time speed or something, is what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, obviously the strict limit is real time, because
Yeah.
the main purpose of having the playoff and everything is real time viewing for the audience and
Right.
competitors and everything. So that is the realistic limitation. Um, but yeah, we'll get some more clear cut
Yeah. There's also
values.
another complexity, which is that within that real time, that 0.03, or that it's like 33 milliseconds per frame, that is split between the two controllers. So if there's one controller
Mhm.
that's only using 10% of the time, then that kind of leaves 90% of the time for the other controller. So that's that's going to be really tricky if you have two controllers that are very computationally expensive. even if each of them can run at real time, if you put them together, it's only going to be running at half
Mhm.
the time, right? So I
Yeah,
think
in the past, we
it's
did
not an
have
easy
that
problem.
requirement, that, is essentially half, but split between the two. That was back in the days of fuzzy asteroids. So yeah, it might make more sense for us to see about going to async and maybe different processes or what we can do there for the controllers. But this has to be balanced with the dev team's time essentially. But we'll discuss and see what we can implement, with the least amount of pain for everyone and what's the most fair.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's, I think we could leave that at that. Let's see. Had a couple more questions. So, I've already started making my presentation just to get an idea. And then is there a strict format that needs to be followed, or is it just like you just have to include these things and you could include other stuff as well? And there's no
We
like,
will have we will have a fairly strict layout format for what is on each slide. Um, there will likely be some wiggle room with the overall requirement or constraint being the time. Um,
mhm.
because right now we have an unknown number of teams. We know what the max will be, but we don't know what the bottom end will be. So we don't want to have each team taking 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, we'll send out in the past, we've had a very strict template. So we'll
Mhm.
likely do something similar, but there will be some wiggle room,
Okay.
just not a ton.
Can I visually change the template and the theme?
Yes, yes, that
Okay.
is up to you. We'll just have requirements on the content, not on you know, the uh actual design or aesthetics or anything. That's up to you.
Okay, gotcha. And is there a slide limit or is there only a time limit?
We will have guidelines for the number of slides, but the actual constraint is the time.
Okay.
And generally, we'll follow the format of one slide per minute.
Mhm. Also, I'm kind of glad the competition got pushed back because I might be on vacation during that time. But I'm still gonna ask the question, which is that could I pre-record my presentation as a backup just in case if my computer
Yes,
completely breaks and then you'll have that as a backup? Okay.
yes, and we've encouraged teams to do that in the past, especially because we've had teams not be able to attend live because they had other obligations.
Mhm.
So we definitely encourage that. And also because it makes it easier later on to both share and it also makes it easy to show off at NAFIPS at the conference.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely plan on just doing that for peace of mind, because I put a lot of work into this, and I just want to make sure everything's as smooth as possible. Um,
Definitely.
Now, if I do, sorry, continue.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we may go ahead and make that a requirement. We haven't made it a strict requirement in the past, but we might as well at this point. So, um, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, sounds good. That sounds reasonable. And let's say I am attending live from home in a good environment and I do have that pre-recorded presentation. Would you prefer that I give it live instead of showing the presentation still?
What we can do is we can still show the recorded one, unless there are, major changes you'd like to make. But
Right.
we can use the recorded one and then do the live Q&A.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that would make things a lot easier and also make sure that it's within the time limit as well.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's good to hear. But yeah, I'll definitely try to show up live and do all of that.
It's a lot of
Um,
fun. I encourage
mhm.
everyone to join live if possible for the playoff. In the past, we'll have to work out the live stream uh, issues because we we have issues with frame rate on the popular meeting platforms like Teams and Zoom and everything. But then we have issues on the streaming platforms like Twitch with people being able to join and interact and all those things. So in the past, we've done sort of a hybrid system, and then we get latency issues when we try to talk with team members during the actual event. So we'll see what we can do there. There are some things that we can try with some other platforms that might be able to get rid of some of those issues. But it's a lot of fun to do that live and talk about the agent and the results and like what they did while it's competing against this other team. And yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask how many teams have signed up for this year?
This year, we're still in the single digits for teams that have signed up.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully there will be some good competition there, and there'll be at least a few.
Yep.
Yeah, I noticed with the recording last year, the FPS in the YouTube video wasn't very good. So I think
it was terrible.
Yeah, what happened was like someone else from the call was recording your screen, right? You weren't the one recording it yourself.
I was also recording, and it was still terrible.
Oh, really?
So there are, in the past, we've used a combination of OBS and Twitch and YouTube for doing the actual stream of the game. But we had issues with people being able, because we wanted to interact with the audience.
Right.
And so we had both platforms open at the same time. So yeah, we're gonna move to something else. But regardless, recording will happen with OBS or similar. So we're, that was really unfortunate last year. That was our fault. But yeah, we're gonna work out a lot of those issues soon.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I was yeah, hopefully the frame rate and everything else is going to be better as well.
Yeah, for OBS, I don't know if you're familiar, but yeah, OBS should capture a really high frame rate.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm also like I'm really familiar with video, and that's one of my biggest hobbies. So certainly let me know if you'd like suggestions and help with stuff. I love
Please.
OBS. But yeah, it's so have you tried what was did YouTube streaming work well? Because I think the delay
YouTube
there should
streaming
be.
worked. It worked pretty well. They do have a low latency streaming option that works
Yeah,
fairly well. But even then, the lag between what was happening coming out of the YouTube stream and then interaction on the conference platform like Teams or Zoom or whatever it was, that was so much that we were getting, just too much lag in between. So that is the issue we'll be figuring out. But the actual game stream itself will again probably be on YouTube because it's the easiest one for us to deal with. But we could potentially move to Twitch or similar.
sounds good. Yeah, should be pretty good then.
Yeah, we've had
See.
good results, with YouTube. Obviously, Twitch is one of the gold standards, but
Yeah.
yeah, we just want people to be able to interact live, and so that's been the issue we've been dealing with. But we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and I'm just also hoping that the recording that gets uploaded to YouTube won't be like last year with the frame rate issues. Yeah.
No, it'll be being recorded locally with OBS as well. Yeah, so yeah, that was an issue with last year's, and that will not be repeated.
Sounds good. And that's also more incentive for me to make my controller perform better so that it won't just get the performance drops won't just get masked by the FPS issues in the
Yeah,
recording.
exactly. Yeah, it'll be easier to see with 60 FPS.
Oh yeah. It's like a part of me wishes that the time step or the delta time was just 1/60th of a second, but then that would make it twice as hard for me to stay within the time budget as well. So
Yeah, yeah, and we found that 30 hertz is a pretty good middle ground of sim time and the requirements we are gonna put on the controllers. So And the visual aspect is not too bad.
Absolutely. I'll see you. Do I have any other questions? Are we allowed to release our code on GitHub after the submission deadline?
Yes,
Okay.
you're allowed to at any point. And we're not ones to go policing teams, but if we happen to notice that there is some chicanery going on with that aspect, we'd just rather not have to deal with that. As far as we'll say teams being inspired by other teams' efforts. Yeah, but yeah, no, there's absolutely, we encourage it, and frankly, we encourage you to publish your results. There are a number of teams that have published what they've done at both NAFIPS and other conferences, highlighting not just what they did, but also the code and encouraging other people to go use it.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I think the only question that I had left was just with the explainability, because I'm still pretty fuzzy on what the rubric actually is for that. Like, do you want me to say, like, how explicit should I be? Like, am I going to be penalized because I'm just spamming to the output log? Should I say exactly where the asteroid is? Should I give the coordinates of the asteroid I'm targeting, or should I like bucket it into like a part of the screen, say I'm targeting the asteroid on the top left? How much detail? Do you have an example of what an excellent
Yeah,
output would be?
I can, I'll send out the explanation rubric that we have. It may not give you all that detail because it is more guidelines for the human judges, and what their interpretation of the explanation is. So one reason we don't give specific details on that is that we want that to be left up to the students to decide. But you're not going to be penalized for more information, definitely.
Okay,
It's
sounds good.
real. It really, you also being a human, I presume, is that you can also sort of tell, what information is even relevant in the first place. Like, is it relevant? If you get a printout of an explanation that says an asteroid at 1.89374 comma 89.37214 position, is that helpful for you? To me, it's not immediately helpful giving, very precise location details, compared to, something a little bit higher level, like, the threat represented by this asteroid, by the asteroid behind me from whatever direction, was much higher than the one in front of me. And so the selected action was to turn and avoid, and then later on, maybe then I selected to target this asteroid because the threat was higher from this asteroid than this one that's not even moving next to me. Things like that are what we're looking for. And it is. I understand how it could be frustrating because this is an area where there are no clear-cut lines. If that's one reason why the competition exists, is that explaining the actions of an AI such that it's relevant to a human observer is not easy. And so
Yeah.
we don't want to put you in too fine a box to limit what you can do with the explanations. And so we're still experimenting with the best way to do that, to relate what the actions the agents take into the humans and those explanations without both stifling innovation and finding interesting and relevant ways to get those explanations across. So yeah, we'll give you some more guidelines, but we definitely don't want to put too tight of a box around you.
Yeah, that's a helpful answer, and I think I really need to increase the verbosity and really trace what the agent's doing, because when I'm doing my own runs, I'm using many asteroids, but I also know like when you're evaluating the explainability, you're not just putting 100 asteroids in and trying to make any sense of that. You're probably only putting in a
Correct.
few. So I don't need to worry about it spamming if there's 100 asteroids. I need to just, if there's only a few asteroids, I need to say exactly trace the decision. And I think that could also help me debug and actually understand what my thing's doing, because a lot of the time I don't even know. I'm just writing the algorithm. I don't know exactly which path it's going down, which asteroid it's targeting. So that could really help me debug too. So that's going to be my goal for
Yeah,
that.
that's one of the highlights for XAI is not just, explain to me what you're doing right now, but it's the auditability after the fact. Like, oh, why did you decide to do this in this situation? Well, I did this because blank, blank, blank. So that's one reason also why we're going back to this method this year is to be able to audit the actions of the agent throughout the simulation rather than, the shoutcasting was a fun idea, and we may come back to that. But the issue, of course, is the simple time to output an explanation in audio form. That by the time that happens and the human has parsed that and understood that, the agent's on, it's already performed 100 more actions.
Yeah.
So it's not useful. So
Yeah.
that's one reason why we're going back to auditability as well. And in the future, we may have some combination of these things along with visual components. I will say that with Kessler, there have been things developed that show a visual explanation component as well. We may show that off actually.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, that answered a big question because in like I know from last year, right? You just use text to speech. So I had made my explainability right now, just use print statements, and I kept it very general. It never went into specifics because otherwise it would just fill the console up and you couldn't read as fast as it was printing out, let alone
Yeah.
actually speak it out. So yeah, I won't worry about making it too verbose, and I'll have to really uh, get down into the nitty gritty there then. So
Yeah, and
and
part of the point of the competition as well, is to explore these different types of explanation outputs and, you know,
mhm.
I won't say drive the research community, but sort of, highlight some of the issues with different things that people are doing in XAI.
Mhm. Do I need to worry about my controller printing to the console during the competition, or do you silence all of that?
Yeah, we most likely will not allow that, just for the simple fact that we won't be showing the console. But um, for the explanation portion, which won't be shown live during the playoff, we
Mhm.
will record that after the fact with the judges. Basically, we'll record the runs of the agent and whatever we're doing to elicit those explanations, such that everybody can transparently see what's going on as far as us evaluating them. But that won't happen live during the competition.
Right. So you're going to provide us a separate logging function that outputs to a file. But right
Yes.
now,
Yes.
do I need to take away all my print statements for the competition or like disable them, or can I leave them in?
I don't see a problem with leaving them in outside of the cost, the computation cost
Right.
for outputting them to console. If I were you, I would disable them. Um, but we can take a look at that during qualification as well.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, during qualification, like the integration issues, you are gonna help the teams fix issues
Yep.
and get stuff done, right? Okay.
Yep.
So I won't
Yep.
worry too much about that then, because okay. Yeah, yeah, thank you so much, Tim. That's
Yeah, sure thing.
really all the questions I had now.
Yeah, no, they were great questions. And, some of them are things that we, have thought about and haven't implemented. And some of them, yeah, are great points that we just hadn't even thought about implementing until now. So on behalf of the other competitors, thank you as well, because this will be helpful information for them as well. Yeah, and I'm again going to say join the Slack for people watching this after the fact, because that's a great place to have discussions like this and ask questions and propose changes. You know, this isn't a static, you know, this is the way it has to be sort of competition. This is an evolving thing, and we want to hear input from everyone. So thank you, especially.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. I'll also point out when I first went to join the Slack, I had to ask for permission or something. It didn't let me in right away, and I emailed Sam who sent me an invite. So maybe there's a way you can make that so that you could just anyone could join.
Yeah, and we may move to a new Slack channel as well. We're going to keep it the same for the remainder of the year, but yeah, there's a lot of things that we're, you know, learning as we go for you know, collaboration, I'll say. So yeah, we'll see if we can get rid of that. Yeah, I'm not sure what the downsides might be. I doubt we're gonna have too many people trying to join not involved with XFC. So okay. So if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap this up for today. As always, the recording for this will be put on the YouTube channel. I encourage everyone to watch it and ask questions. If you have any additional ones, please email us, the organizers, at these email addresses, and or join the Slack like we just mentioned and put discussions in there. If you don't get a quick response in the Slack, there are some known notification issues, and please just send us an email ping and we will hop on there almost immediately. So with that, we will close out today's seminar. Thanks everybody for joining, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.